All right. I say we have a little bit of a critical mass, so we should probably get started here. Thank you all for joining us on another Wednesday, almost at the end of April here. So hopefully some of you are getting ready for some nice summer activities or summer field work. Welcome to our April conservation conversation. I'm going to be managing our chat and letting people in as well here. If you hear me pause, that's why. Actually, Maddie and Lacey, make sure you guys are co-hosts here real quickly. All right, we have everyone out of the waiting room so far. So thank you all for joining us for our April conservation conversation. This one is on the conservation menu, an updated website that we're super excited to share. And to help share that, we have Maddie Larson and Lacey Enos from the Montana Association of Conservation Districts. They've been part of the staffing team, the lead, I would say, of staffing the project to recreate this website. And so we're super excited to share it with you today. And so first, though, I'll just cover a couple little pieces for housekeeping for today's gathering. So we do have 60 minutes to talk today. We have a pretty short presentation to kind of give you an introduction to the website, and then we're happy to have some conversation about it and answer questions and show you some different pieces. You can definitely put questions in the chat at any time, and we will make sure to get to those, but we do have plenty of time for question and answers. So if you want to hold those, we can keep them there and address them when we get to Q&A. And if we want, we have a little bit of a bigger group today, and we have a combined meeting of our natural resources grants working group members and members of, I guess, what would be considered the public to that group, but it's the group that we serve. So watershed coordinators, other agency partners, and those that are part of the watershed network. So it's a nice combined first hour of the meeting. I think if we still end up with under 20 people, as soon as I finish this intro, it would just be nice to have everyone say hello and the organization that you are with. And I can help lead that if you want to just introduce yourselves and then pop to the next person. And then we will get into a more formal intro. So for the recording purposes that we'll send out after this meeting. So we might as well start with those introductions. And then for those of you that don't know me, I'm Amy Seaman. I'm the Executive Director of Montana Watershed Coordination Council. And I'm here with Madeline Larson and Lacey from Montana Association of Conservation Districts. I have longer intros for you two when we get started. So I'm going to jump to the other guests. And if you want to introduce yourselves, I'll start in order of just who I see on my screen, which is Peter Brown. Do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Peter Brown, Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation and the A&B West Ranches in the Paradise Valley. Good to see you all.
Thank you. Andy.
Sorry, slow on the mic button here. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Andy Efta, Regional Hydrologist for the Northern Region of the Forest Service. Glad to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. And then we have someone from Flathead Lakers.
Yeah, hi, this is Constanza von der Pallen, Critical Lands Program Director with the Flathead Lakers in Folsom. Thanks.
Great. Amber?
Yes, also with the Flathead Lakers, I'm the Development and Communications Manager. We're sitting in opposite rooms right now.
Oh, nice. Awesome. It's nice to meet you. Michelle?
Hi, everyone. Michelle McGree, Future Fisheries Coordinator with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in Helena.
And Ladara?
Hello, I'm the Operations Coordinator for both MWCC and MACD.
Okay, and then next looks like Natalie.
Hi, yes, Natalie Moses, Project Manager with the Vital Ground Foundation based out of Missoula.
Samantha?
Hi, everybody. Samantha True. It looks like it won't turn my camera on, but I am the program manager for the Reclamation and Development Grants Program at the Conservation and Resource Development Division of DNRC. I am also the MIPA coordinator for the division. And I am based out of Helena, but working remotely in Missoula.
Great. Eric Trum.
Hi, Eric Trum. I work for EPA Non-Point Source Program out of the Helena office. Nice to see everyone.
And I think finally we have Aaron.
Erin Clark. Get my camera fixed up here. There we go. Director of Development and Partnerships for Montana Forest Consultants based in Missoula.
Great. Thank you all for doing that. Hopefully there are reasons that you have to connect with each other if you haven't already after this meeting. So to jump back in, we will dive into our presentation now. Both Maddie, Lacey, and I will be presenting to you in this, and then we'll have a good time for Q&A. So as we get started, again, thank you for joining us to learn about the conservation menu. We have Maddie today. She's the engagement coordinator, and Lacey, who is the communications specialist, both with the Montana Association of Conservation Districts. And since we have a little time to give a tiny bit of background, Maddie joined in 2023. And in addition to working on the menu, she's also the primary coordinator for MACD events, including the Montana Soil Health Symposium, the annual MACD convention, and she also leads the MACD fundraising efforts, scholarship programs, and education work. If you haven't gone to their programs, definitely should. It's a great networking communications opportunity. And Lacey joined as a communications specialist in October of 24 and has provided huge support for the conservation menu since then, and also leads MACD's communications efforts, including website support, outreach development, and other digital content creation. So these two have been instrumental in setting up this website and are the experts to ask questions to today about how to use it, what information you can get from the website, etc. I do want to just say a shout out as well that our other staff, Kiera Davis, our development lead, and both Ladara and Michael, staff that are shared, and Michael with MACD have also all contributed to the project. And then we'll just take more credit. We continue to push these conservation conversations forward because it is a nice time for us to have informal conversations and hopefully share information and training that does support your everyday work. And before we fully get started, we just want to flag, and we'll remind you as well, that we do have a save the date out right now for the symposium, our watershed symposium. It'll be the first in-person symposium since 2018, and we'll be heading to Billings the week of September 15th. So thank you all for joining us today. We are going to dive in, and I am going to actually dive in by just giving a little bit of a background on what, oops, sorry if I keep asking you to unmute someone. We're going to dive in with some background on what the conservation menu is, what its origins are, and how we got to where we are right now. And so it's been a really great project for MWCC to step in on more, because we were not the original creators of the project by any means, but it has been an evolving project that's been out there to serve a number of working groups over time. And we even just recently, last week, learned some more details on its history, which was really, really cool. So some of you may have seen the first iteration of the conservation menu. We have pretty similar branding, but it was in 2017. And it turns out it was actually a brainchild to serve the original Charles M. Russell working group. If any of you are familiar, they thought, hey, it'd be really great to have this community resource that can especially help connect to partners and the community to get this information displayed better. And so you can see these logos. It had some original financial support from National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and it was originally headed up by what was then SWCDM, what's now MACD. So it was originally put out there to support landowners and other conservation professionals access this information. And so that hasn't really changed too much. The idea was really like centralized grant funding programs that support the natural resource conservation issues that are that member groups were interested in. So different rangelands programs, wildlife, water, etc. And it's broken down into those topic areas so that landowners and professionals could actually access that more simplified. And the other piece is it really highlights programs in Montana so that many state-based programs, especially, and other private funding that can be specifically applied to Montana as the focal point. So it had a great starting point. There was a lot of information in there, but as does happen often, websites take a lot of work to maintain in a really high functioning manner. And so over time it had waned in, any group's one group's ability to maintain the site. And so it maybe fell a little out of date and wasn't serving the purpose as well as had hoped. And so over the past 2 years, MACD has really helped lead and primarily fund a large effort to revamp the menu, to get some of the technical aspects of it upgraded. And we worked with them as MWCC to help make that happen. So behind the scenes for the past 2 years, we kind of picking away with one website contractor we actually did use, because there were quite a lot of changes that were made to create a website that has those same primary goals of helping get this conservation funding out to landowners and professionals, but is a much more user-friendly website that flows a little bit more like a shopping experience and just much more intuitive. And there have been supporters along the way that have helped get this project to where it is today, and we're super thankful for that and hope that you all enjoy what this product has really become. And so I just have one last slide here. You can see the main purposes for people to be able to find these grants and programs all across the state, but primarily Montana focused. There are access to programs that are regional or national, but really we want to focus on Montana. You can find local offices for conservation districts and the watershed groups and others that you would want to work with in your conservation network. And then there's a library that we're very much working on building out, but to hopefully provide resources to help you actually write and access those grants. And so I'm going to that was my quick introduction, and I'm going to turn it over to Maddie and Lacey. Oops.
Thanks so much, Amy.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
So I am gonna share a video that Lacey helped to put together that just goes through all of the different features of the website and how to use it. I'm also, let's see, I just put the link in the chat for the conservation menu. I really can't encourage you guys enough to just explore it kind of on your own. I do think that this video is a great starting point to showcase all the different pages on it, but really, hands-on experience is gonna help you more than anything else to get familiar with it. So I will share my screen here.
Welcome to the Montana Conservation Menu, your resource for connecting to fellow Montanans, local communities, and conservation organizations. The Montana Conservation Menu is here to help you find natural resource funding, grants, loans, and technical assistance from across Montana state. The Montana Conservation Menu is a joint effort between the Montana Association of Conservation Districts and the Montana Watershed Coordination Council. Together, they have recreated the menu to better provide up-to-date resources and information with a more user-friendly site navigation for better assistance in conservation development and support. This website is designed to help you navigate Montana's conservation funding resources as simply as if you were online shopping. Under the Grants and Programs section, you can filter your search with the options provided or search keywords to explore various funding opportunities, eligibility criteria, and application instructions to assist you in finding the best fit for your project. Additionally, you can suggest grants and programs via our Suggest a Grant Program form, as well as update any existing grants or programs, all under the Suggest a Grant Program tab. The Montana Conservation Menu is here to keep you connected. You can locate your local conservation district offices or offices of other conservation organizations under the Local Offices section with additional contact information and directions to assist in connecting you to the right support for your project. The Resource Library contains a variety of information to assist in your conservation efforts. Here you can find documents, workshops, tips, and more to get started on your project. Stay up to date on upcoming events and workshops under the Workshops and Events tab, where you can find more information and sign-up links for helpful webinars, trainings, and events. Under the News section, you can view featured updates from programs and grants, local offices, resources, and general news items. If you have any questions on the Montana Conservation Menu or would like to share any feedback, you can contact the Montana Conservation Menu support staff through our Contact Us form. Thank you for taking a look through the Montana Conservation Menu. We look forward to continuing to support you and your conservation efforts.
Great. So we are just really proud of the final product that the conservation menu has become. And the intention is really for it to be a resource both for landowners and conservation organizations that are looking for funding, but also a tool for funding organizations to help get the word out about opportunities, really amplify, the impact that those can have, and to try to reach new audiences and bring new organizations and individuals in to new funding sources. So a couple ways I want to highlight that you guys could get involved with the menu is, for one, helping us add to it. At the end of that video, the Contact Us page was shown. You're always welcome to reach out via email, but the easiest way is probably to go onto the website and use that Suggest a Grant program. Those can be programs that your organization puts together, or it can be funding opportunities that you found that you would just love to see added. We are kind of open to anything in terms of what we can put on it. We are also working on developing some new promotional materials, and we would invite any support for helping to share those and just connect more people with the conservation menu. All right, and I think that that is all I've got. I will turn it back over to Amy.
And I was just going to share one next slide that we have here. It's not as nice as I want it to be because I can't, my copy pasting has stopped working on my computer. So we're working on that. But I just wanted to add a little of our background too, for not just Natural Resource Grants Working Group members here, but for those other watershed community members to help see how this website helps support those efforts that we're having for collaboration, to understand how the grant programs can overlap to serve our watershed group members better. And so I had mentioned how this was sort of an original brainchild of the CMR working group. And I think what's really nice now is, to me, it represents a lot of the work and outreach. Like Maddie mentioned, a great opportunity for grant funders to get and connect with the communities they need to reach that will hopefully be future applicants. Because, and in that way, it really mirrors or is a way for those people to announce their work, but it's those members of the Natural Resource Grants Working Group whose grant opportunities we are really especially trying to highlight. And I think the important thing behind that is, for those of you that may be applying to those grants, it's nice for you to know that there is a group of people meeting at the state level to think about how we can coordinate funding opportunities and make them more accessible to you as the applicant. And so that is still something that's happening through this grant, or sorry, through this working group that continues to happen as a background process, which are they're not separate from the conservation menu, because there were many members that stepped up on the Natural Resource Grants Working Group to form a subcommittee to inform the final way that this conservation menu would look. So it has been a really nice group effort. So I appreciate those NERGWG, as we call it, members stepping up to help figure out what the final product would look like. And hopefully it will continue to represent the work of that group going forward. And so that was primarily what we did have to present, actually, for this portion of the meeting. And so if we want to jump into Q&A, we can go right into that. We're happy to answer questions on future plans for it or anything, really. Yes, Peter.
Hey, thanks. Great presentation and good job. Congrats on the dashboard. It looks really, I've used it a little bit, just kind of navigating around, and it's pretty intuitive and an efficient way to think about funding projects. So thank you all for your good work on that. Couple of questions. How many are you tracking? How many people are currently using the dashboard first? And is there a way to get some metrics on that of what the demographics are, like where the people are at and those sorts of things? And then second question, I know that early on we were talking about the RRGL program, the Renewable Resource Grants and Loans that Montana DNRC has. Are these two resources coordinating with one another, the conservation menu and the RRGL menu?
Yeah, I can answer that first question. We kind of were primarily focused on getting the site up and running, but we are looking to add things to it to track those metrics and better kind of see what audience is engaging with the website. But the priority was just making sure it was up and running and kind of working out all the kinks. So that is coming soon, shortly in the near future.
And the one thing I know we've accomplished was making sure that our IP addresses aren't tracked on it to inform that process, since we're on it quite a lot. The second part of your question is a good question, because we've thought about it as well for some of those resource or the WASAC other, especially loan programs are more heavily represented in other frameworks. And so one more internal conversation we've had is thinking about, especially the loan programs for ag and others could fit more under our resources programs, since they're a little bit less centered on the programs that our groups are accessing. Because I would answer for now and chime in, Maddie and Lacey, otherwise, is that for now, some of it ends up being for specific agency grants. If you're finding them on other platforms, a lot of times they're going to be a redundant. And we'll have that same information. As we'll look at later in our meeting, it's a little bit easier, it's more streamlined for funders to actually post their funding opportunities. But for right now, any grant posts that we bring in will end up being formatted pretty much in this way. Did that answer that, or do you guys have anything else to add?
Yeah, that's great. I think it's a good, the reason I asked that question is because I think some entities might be looking for cost share incentive grants, like what's on the conservation menu, and not realize that there's actually loans that come from DNRC and Montana Department of Agriculture as well. And so maybe that could be on that resource page, or that resources link location. As that, for that drop down menu, it could be like loans, or I don't know.
Yeah, I realized actually at that Rancher Resource Network meeting, it could be a much bigger piece of it, because those small loans lend in so much to like seeding and different projects that could happen. And there is, and I think some of it has been us trying to not duplicate work too much. Not gonna get it correct. The WASACT acronym group that manages a lot more of the sort of infrastructure based grants and loans in the state versus what the conservation menu represents, which ends up being a little bit more natural resource or land projects, I guess, versus infrastructure type funding as well. So it is a little bit limited in the fact it's not an exhaustive set of funding sources. It's still definitely within that kind of conservation framework. But I think connecting to some of those other big pages can be resources. It's definitely the less developed section. And I will say as a caveat, what we didn't want to do in that resource section was create just a bunch of links that go to general grant resources that we had to keep up. So I think it will be good to figure out exactly what makes sense to have on that resource page. And the other cool thing with the grants and loans, I think, are the opportunities to bring the people who represent those programs into the NRGWG, so then we actually really are communicating to know when those opportunities open up.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that as just making sure that there's a communication path with Department of Ag and DNRC, our GL program, make sure that they continue to stay aware that this resource is here, and if they want to share their resources, what's the best way to do that?
I saw Erin, you had your hand up.
Thanks. One of the powerful things about the menu is how often it is updated. So I try to visit once a month and look for new things that are there. Is there a way to filter to show, just new opportunities that have been added in a certain period of time, or to get the new stuff up to the top?
We are currently working on our filtering system right now. So that is currently something that we are working with the developer on to see if there is a better way to kind of sort it timeline wise. Right now you can sort it by quarter, but not necessarily by like what's been recently added. So we are looking into that, but that's really helpful feedback to hear that that's something people would be interested in.
Great. For now, the monthly email newsletter that you send out does kind of seem to highlight some of them, so that you can then jump from that over to the menu and try to find those things. But if there was a filtering option, that'd be fantastic. Thanks for looking into it.
Yeah, Erin, thank you for mentioning too the newsletters. It's a great point to mention that both MWCC and MACDs, when there's the different funding opportunities, people have traditionally seen ours, especially linked to our own like funding page resources on the MWCC website, but that's all going to be now on the conservation menu, so that we're all just directing to the same place and not obviously or having to maintain it in two different places, but it will all be directed there. So when you see that information in our newsletters, it will direct you there. Michelle.
Hi. I'll just echo what Peter said in terms of how awesome this site looks. And all you guys have done with it. Looks really nice. I just had a question about updating it. So I see that there's an avenue to basically report a new funding source. But as I look through it, especially for the grant programs that I manage, both of them are showing expired or closed, which I would love to change. So I'm wondering if there's a way that you guys would like people to give feedback, either, because they know the grant program or they know it might be helpful to be tagged with different categories or something like that.
Yeah, I can answer that one. So on the Suggest a Grant Program page, there is also a button that says Update an Existing Program. And it is just another link to a form, but it's much shorter because we wanted to really streamline it and not ask you guys to be putting in all of the information again about a grant program, just to update one detail about it. So that is, I guess, the easiest option. You're also always welcome to just send a quick email to that email listed on the Contact Us page, and we can work off of feedback that way. And then as the NERGWORG meetings continue to convene, there will be kind of regular reminders and solicitations for agencies to submit their funding opportunities and to do exactly what you just did, kind of go back and review what's been posted and make sure that it's accurate. So all that to say, we're kind of experimenting with different ways. We wanted to leave a lot of options open so that all of the funding groups can figure out what works best for them to get the information to us.
Great, thank you.
Maddie, did you say that form is already online or not yet?
I believe it is. Let me grab the link to it. One moment.
Thanks.
Here, actually, I'll just share my screen really quickly. So here, if you go to the Suggest a Grant Program page, it's this program update form. That's if you're existing or updating an existing grant or program on the menu. We'll take you here, and then all you have to put in is the name of the program. You can put in the organization name, and then really the only other thing we're looking for is the details that you need us to update. And I also just wanted to jump back really quickly to Peter's suggestion. I really like the idea of adding some of those loan programs to the menu, and just in a more general sense, we all know that the funding landscape is changing a lot right now. And we want the conservation menu to be the best tool that it can possibly be for, again, both landowners, conservation organizations, and funders. So we really appreciate suggestions for other things that we can add or ways that we can refine it to make it best fit the current needs. And we would really invite everyone to just continue sharing any opinions you have going forward.
Lacey, did you want me to share the survey at all? Or was that the Google Doc?
Oh, no, that's just for you to have access to.
Okay,
as
I
well.
wasn't sure if we needed to share any survey. One thing I did want to circle back on, because I thought it was a great something that we just didn't quite cover. I'm gonna just share a tiny portion of my screen really quickly. We didn't talk too much about the contact page, but one of the really important things too that we hope to just at least translate to this group, and as you encourage others to use the website and check it out, is that in addition to just working hard and trying to work together as MACD and MWCC to not let the website go out of date, we also are trying hard to make sure that this Contact Us page actually will go to one of us. So we have people monitoring the site, a way to make sure you get a human. And I think the reason I want to emphasize that is it can be frustrating, of course, for groups to try to contact grant administrators and, not be able to get in touch with anybody. So we are hoping by really keeping an eye on that, for the most part, when it's our state and federal agencies, one of us should be 1 degree of separation from a person actually managing that grant, so that we really can try to serve partners in that way. And as we get more connections, the same isn't fully true for all the private foundations, but at least by us keeping track of those grant opportunities, we're trying to make sure that that contact information is updated there, so that we, are ideally having people no more than 1 or 2 emails away from being able to really talk to a person about the opportunity, because that can be such a frustration. So we want you to know that that's real and doesn't just go into the ether. I don't know if there are other questions that people have about this. We'd be open if anyone wants to email, of course, with resource ideas. I don't know, Maddie or Lacey, if you want to talk about other options that we've talked about, like with resources that you all have coming up too for MACD for grant resources. If you want to talk about that for a couple minutes, we have some time here.
Yeah, MACD is working with both DNRC and the Western Montana Conservation Commission to provide grant writing and grant management trainings. The eligibility initially is limited to conservation district staff and supervisors, and then organizations that are within the Columbia River Basin. But, with all of the trainings, we have quite a few spots available. So we have been able, for some of them, to open up the invitation to participate to other conservation organizations. And I don't think that we have the date specified yet for the next grant writing training. It should be sometime in the fall. It's a full 2-day Zoom training. The instructor is phenomenal. She manages to keep it engaging virtually for multiple days at a time, which I think is amazing. And participation is free. We ask for a little bit of a deposit upon registration just to make sure that people are really committed to following through and attending. But I'm really excited to be able to share more information on that once we get those dates set up, and hopefully, include more organizations going forward.
Great. So that will be, yes.
Oh, I just want to say
No, you're
thank you. Really look forward to exploring this. It's been a while since I remember when it got started. So I'm really excited. I appreciate also this conversations just to go over things that sometimes we need reminding that are out there. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all for joining to learn about this. And the other thing I would add is one of the other pieces of information I was realizing is very good for this website is that there are other nonprofits that do have small grant programs, whether it was Farmers Union or small even education programs. That was another thing I was learning about at that Rancher Resource Network. And so I think as you all just have your ears to the ground, there are still a lot of smaller opportunities that could be wrapped into here. And I was surprised, people that have those opportunities want them to be announced. And so this can help, whether big or small. I know for us, since we do run our own grant programs as well, it's nice to see when they are competitive and people are still applying to them and want to utilize that funding. And it feels really worth our time as a funder to see grants coming in. So if you hear of anything, just send us information. And if there are no other questions, we certainly can wrap up this part of our meeting a little bit early. Let me show you we just have a thank you slide because thank you for joining us today. We have typically done conservation conversation in May but given the pace of everybody entering the field season and the summer and our other planning, we actually have decided to call off the May conservation conversation. So you are off the hook, and keep your ear to the ground on what we have next. We typically would start programming on these again in September. And right now we are looking to actually most likely host our keynote or highlighted speaker for the symposium as our conservation conversation, so that others that aren't able to join that event can get a little bit of a snapshot and also participate. So TBD, stay in touch, and thank you all for joining, and we'll follow up with the recording of this conversation here shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And for those of you staying on the meeting here, we could decide to take a quick little break right now if we want, since the remainder potentially of other NERGWG people might only be able to join in the latter half. So I think we might want to take a break till 1, if that makes sense, so that we're not going ahead of other people that might join. So, okay, see you all back at 1. I don't know if we've actually gained back our people, so I'm wondering if I did send a quick email, but I'm wondering if people assumed that it was totally done. But we did save some of the more business nerd book parts for now, so we'll see if people jump back in. Most of the crew has appeared to have left the premises. Maddie, I did forward an email Andy sent after that. It's good. He said if there were any different new Forest Service contacts that we didn't have, he could try to help us get them.
That would be great.
And I know Eric had to jump off after one. Well, I guess while we wait for anyone else to join, Hannah or Samantha, do you have questions that you want to ask, or we mostly next we're going to share kind of run through the process to resubmit the grant program and that form a little bit more, which was what Michelle had basically asked what the best way was. So we can just go through that again if it's helpful.
I think I got it. I don't have any questions. It's pretty straightforward as it is. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, as I was looking for our programs on there, I noticed 319 grants aren't on there. I just put in a contact us email to see if you could like resurrect what I'm sure was on the old version, or if you wanted me to submit that as a new program. But otherwise, it looks straightforward, and thanks for anticipating all that stuff.
Yeah, what we were, I think, thinking of for, what's nice about it, process wise, is that we wouldn't have to use that kind of wonkier live Excel spreadsheet, which is kind of the main goal, trying to get away from that to maintain it versus this, which can be a form. So when a form is created, it'll actually just create a post that we have to go through and approve on the back end. And so we would end up sending out an email, a somewhat regular, at least quarterly email to this group to just say to go update your info if you haven't yet.
I guess something that I've been thinking a little bit about, especially after attending M&A's fundraising summit yesterday, is just how we can adapt to some of the federal funding changes with the menu. And I was thinking that for private foundations, I mean, virtually all nonprofits right now are looking to expand private foundation funding. But I also know that some of those foundations are feeling pretty overwhelmed by just the number of new submissions. So I was gonna, I guess, suggest that we reach out to private foundations and ask if there's any additional notes they would want us to add in terms of exactly what they're looking for or changes they're making to their review process because of increased applications. Is there anything like that that would be helpful for state grants? Any additional notes or like specifications that we could put on with your guys' funding?
Let me think about that.
Welcome back, Michelle. We're just, I think a bunch of people maybe did jump off, not realizing we had some other, a little more information, but we were more talking about that request a grant program again. And Maddie was just saying that if there's any updates we can make to your grants or other opportunities that are available or not because of the current state of federal funding, we can definitely try to note that. Did I cover that correctly? Yeah, I definitely was pumped. I was excited at that Rancher Resource Network meeting about the opportunity to add the loans because there's just more groups doing them, I think, than I realized. And I keep forgetting the name of the one. It was a new group I'd never even heard about. And I think through that, and then I believe it was Farmers Union they have like a small education and outreach grant opportunity. So I think there are more nonprofits as well that are going to have very applicable grants that, as other funding for state and federal or private funds are more competitive, that some of those really small opportunities are going to be really good opportunities for people to use.
So to answer Maddie's question, I feel like maybe that type of nuance comes into the description that people are submitting about their program. Like, yeah, I'm just thinking eligible projects could be like a type of field, but then, yeah, so maybe like a prompt for program managers to include eligible projects in that description, because I think the way the framework you have built out, if you start adding that level of detail into the like filters, that's just not going to work. But I think if you can prompt people in their descriptions to give more detail, that could help.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I guess the other kind of thing that I was thinking about is how people can identify match funding. I'm not sure if that's something that like you guys would be able to give insight into, or it might be something that we just need to figure out how to set up on the back end. But I think down the road, it would be really cool if when you open up a grant opportunity on the menu, it might have a suggested list of like potential sources of match funding for this project, which again, I don't know how complicated the implementation of something like that would be, and we'd need to be really careful that we weren't being exclusionary about it and actually limiting people's creativity when they look for match. But I do think that that's a very common challenge, especially for people that are newer to grants.
I wonder if that's something you could do on the like web development backend using some of the demographics of like when you're shopping, it gives you suggestions for like, oh, you might also like this. So I wonder, it'd be interesting to test like which programs users are spending more time reading about. And that could kind of
Set up
serve
an
that
algorithm.
The other
Yeah.
part of it that you already have is that you have state and federal listed. So like for a lot of grants, people are looking for state match or whatever. So it could kind of kick back to that.
I almost wonder too, it reminds me of one of the earlier NERGWG meetings that I was at, probably before I understood as much of who all the people represented was. I think it could be helpful to like maybe demystify maybe the workflow of how the different grants can connect as well. And I think, for instance, in the watershed management grants, people are more familiar with okay, you have a planning grant and a project grant, and you know the steps between planning, prioritization, and the project itself are semi-clearly set up into grant like bins that you would know where to apply depending on what part of your project you're at, but maybe almost even like flow charts between how people can use the different state opportunities or how they connect, since some of those really are built to like flow into the next grant opportunity. But I think that's actually one of the well, it's not small because it's an entry point, but I think it's one of the learning curves for groups getting in on those grants? Like, well, what point are they in? You know, is it a multi-year grant, multi-year project, or still planning? And I think that's, as a side note, since it's a small group, we can talk a little more. I was like, it's nice. One thing I'd like to be able to see is empowering groups to be able to get more multi-year grants. And that's complicated, but I think being able to see all the funding in one place like this is really helpful, because then you're like, oh, well, most, you know, you get to see how limited most sources are or not. And I think building the timeline of when to ask for grants for bigger projects is really complicated. So hopefully this could help somehow, like, create a fuller picture so people can make bigger asks generally.
Amy and I were talking last week or the week before maybe about adding a page on the conservation menu that would essentially be like Meet the NERGWRG members, so that you guys are represented not only in having your grants listed, but also, you know, it's clear to everyone that like these different agencies are working together. And that might be a good spot. I mean, you know, if you guys have, which I'm sure you all do, information about your different grant and loan programs on your own websites, we could add all of those to the resources page. But my concern is that that would then kind of turn into just like a massive list of links rather than something that's really getting updated. So it might be a good spot, you know, if we were to put in different like agency profiles on that Meet the NERGWRG members page, we could put in more information about things like that with, you know, what a multi-year grant looks like, or what grant progression would look like from the planning to implementation stage.
I think it's hard to move away from getting a page of links, especially with some of the card grants. There's a lot of information that gets updated on our websites that isn't necessarily communicated across the grant programs. And so it'd be hard to keep this list apprised of some of those changes without having a link directly to the program that has a little bit more program specific information. But I think you're right that just a page of links is kind of tricky, but it would be duplicative to have the program pieces here, and then every time something's updated on DNRC side, we have to then come back and update it there, versus the grant information, which for many of our programs is pretty set in stone as they're tied to statutes, and they have set opening and close times. So I'm not really sure how to reflect that most appropriately on this menu, if any of that made sense.
Yeah, it did. And Amy, if you know, whenever you want to jump back over to the agenda that we had scheduled, let me know. But I guess one other question that I had just while we have some of you here is, are there specific demographics or audiences that you guys are looking to connect with more? Or like, what would the best outcome for you guys look like in terms of increased engagement with your funding programs?
I'll just chime in, I guess, from our side. I think, and this sort of goes against us having a website at all. I feel like the people we're trying to reach that we can't reach are people who don't use a computer, and that like we've reached people, new audiences with like a radio type program. And maybe that's changing as more people are using the internet and electronics and stuff. But it seems like, you know, the ranchers or the farmers that maybe aren't as connected to electronic things are kind of the people we're missing.
I feel like that's where going to like trade shows like Stock Growers Association and if you're not promoting the conservation menu directly to those types of people, then you can at least pull it up and like go through the motion of finding a grant program that might work for what they're interested there in real time. For us, I think having this back up and running is a great resource just because match is such a big barrier for our funding program. So just having a place to direct people where they can really easily filter down to match that would work for them.
Yeah, I'm thinking a little bit back on the DNRC, your comment, Samantha, on, I think there are definitely ways to represent the members and that connection, and then have, right, by still maintaining the highlight grant opportunities, keeping those updated as they are relevant. Is it correct, Maddie, that because we don't have the sorting for dates totally figured out, but right now, at least the newer posts filter up, I think, just on that basis. So in a way of, when you have multiple grants coming out of the department, having them updated in real time as they are updated is helpful. It is a little more work, of course, on your end, but then it doesn't necessarily mean we have to have every single DNRC grant perfectly updated all the time. And maybe as we get that filter figured out, then like figuring out the standing page for the NERGWA group, however that works, is the best way to link out. Because a lot of that information doesn't change then. But
I also just want to make it clear that, like, while right now we are asking for a lot of participation from funding agencies to keep stuff updated, our intention is to ultimately like have it be a job description under MACD or MWCC or both, that someone would be actively not only updating what's on the conservation menu, but seeking out new opportunities and kind of doing some of that work proactively, so that your guys' role would more be a secondary check just to make sure that we're not missing details, but the responsibility wouldn't be fully on you guys, you know, because we didn't set it up in a way where agencies would have their own profile and be able to update stuff themselves kind of intentionally. We want it to be something that it's not on you guys to have to duplicate all of your opportunities somewhere new, something that we kind of want to manage. But in these early stages of the revitalized menu, we are going to be asking for just a little bit more of that active checking into it.
I appreciate that, and I apologize if it sounded like I was put off by the ask. I am stepping into this participation in place of someone who was there a little bit earlier on, and so for me, I'm still trying to grab my bearings of exactly what my role is in representing the DNRC and how to best participate in this menu on behalf of the agency. So I apologize if it sounded like I was saying this is not useful or duplicative. It is not. It is really a fantastic resource, and so I'm happy to do whatever is needed of me.
Perfect. And yeah, no, it did not come across that way at all. You're good.
no, it didn't. And it's super, I think, and that's where we wanted to have this as more of a, yeah, kind of more discussion too, because as we've thought about it, and so Hannah said she needs to jump at 1:30, so we can keep moving into the next part and then jump off here. But as it's been over the last 2 years of meeting with NERGWA and working on this website too, it has become just how clear how much it is really a tool of the NERGWA members and like the groups and things that work that's represented there. And if you're familiar with the Wasect group, let me see if I can find their website actually. Some of it was an attempt to realize that it's emulating that a little bit, where like maybe there's a benefit of also just showing to our funders or fundees that this group is regularly meeting and trying to coordinate. So I think beyond just hopefully not just duplicating grant information to people, it's hopefully trying to show that like support network and collaboration behind it as like a suite of grants that support that. So hopefully in that way too, we don't want it to ever feel redundant, because there's certainly many other websites out there that do have some similar information. And so it's very interesting to like decide to have our own. But I think one of the benefits is just having it sort of show that collaborative support. This one is that DNRC. I don't know. It's kind of interesting, or I mean, it makes sense that I'm going to put it in the chat here, is under DNRC in this case, because it is all of these different infrastructure grants that it helps coordinate. I think because NERGWG is a little bit, since it's multi-agency, it's nice to have, I mean, the third-party website seems like an easier option for sure for organizing, but this was a kind of cool, it's really similar, but they actually are like a formalized group. It's something, you know, I don't know, we've talked about a lot of different fun ways to get the public involved. I think we need more NERGWG members there to keep that conversation going. But this WASAC coordinating team was a little bit, I don't know if the word's inspiration. It's a little bit of an inspiration for how we organize some of the menu. We're making sure that all of that stuff can be organized together. This is where it's kind of cool. Like it has meeting information and other things for the actual WASAC group, which is a function that our menu doesn't play yet, but actually could kind of play for NERGWG too, where it actually is a little space. That's volunteering a lot, Maddie, but you know, because it is just links to like the meeting, and that would be stuff that actually public wouldn't access most likely. And I guess I'll go ahead and just share a couple of the things that Maddie and I put together, because what we do want to bring to this group, and we'll end up reconnecting with others as we move forward. But because it has been a big effort, and we do want to figure out how it can serve all of our programs, but we also want to make sure that we're not letting it go out of date again. So we do want to figure out, and we wanted to bring up to this group the opportunities and a discussion about how NERGWG members could actually support and sponsor this effort moving forward, knowing that we have had good support in the past. We have very little bit of support we can work on right now, but it has been a big effort over the last 2 years. And actually with all of this support and this time that we've put forward as MACD and MWCC, it actually has been basically over a $25,000 effort for us to revamp the project, which is just in staff time, working with the contractor, because this was definitely required building a whole different subset with just a lot more functionality than either of our web pages had at the time. So that's fortunately like a one-time only cost that has been invested, and now we have the product that we have, but really trying to think proactively about how we can actually fund this thing going forward. And so we did want to share with you all, just for being transparent, but also urging participation, and how we can think about ways that members of NERGWG and other funding groups may want to connect, to contribute and partner on this. It's like we really do see it as a partnership that's going to have some true expenses if we want to keep it shiny and new, I guess is the way to say. So we've worked together to come up with a budget that we think is really realistic for like an annual operating type budget for the conservation menu. And so wanted to talk about some of the opportunities and benefits that could come along with creating sponsorship opportunities. And I wasn't going to go through this in specific detail, but if you have questions, what I do want to more talk about than just the specific budget numbers. Is talking about how we are reaching out within the group so that we understand the benefits that everyone is gaining from it, and then the work that goes into it. And ideally, this is a like fantastic advertising and marketing opportunity for members to, you know, do the visibility increase. It was mentioned earlier too, Peter mentioned, and Hannah, I know you've mentioned this, like just reducing barriers to finding match funding. And then the benefit of MACD and us then being able to actually continue coordinating the NERGWG meetings. As you guys all know, of course, we've had some trouble connecting, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes, just time-wise, but we also, there are no more specific funds identified for us to help keep coordinating. And so that's a big piece that we hope there's value in, and thinking about how we can bring those opportunities to the fundees a little bit more. And so we've put together some opportunities for sponsorship and drafted up what it could look like on the website itself, and where sponsors could have their benefits, like visible marketing benefits shown, which of course, like on the About Us page, that very first homepage, when you scroll down, having the sponsor menu, support area, and then a thank you page. And I think this is where, I know Hannah, you got to jump off, but I think we'd like to bring to the NERGWG group a broader discussion of how these benefits can best serve the groups, so that, you know, there would be an interest. We don't want to create like a one size fits all option, but also not committing to creating too much work, but to really represent or show support. And then we can have just other real tangible kind of marketing, advertising type benefits, because as we mentioned before, our newsletters, both MACD and MWCC have the newsletters that go hand in hand with advertising the funding opportunities that will be in the menu, and then being able to post and get outreach and logos on the different grants. And so I think depending on the value of some of those different opportunities, we'd like to hear from this group for sure on that. And then we do need a little bit fuller group, but you know, come up how we could do this. I think it's a great time. We would really love, if we can, to try to launch and get into a program for sponsorship this year if possible. Ideally, it's a good time with state, just the state budget year and things, to try to see if this is something that could work. And Maddie, do you want to chime in more there? But otherwise, if you all, either any of you have a minute or two to just have a first reaction to this or thoughts. We want it to be something I think that serves everybody, enables us to actually really do the good work to keep it a great resource and keep NERGWG collaborating. Those are really important to us.
I'll just jump in before I have to go and add another potential benefit I saw to this sponsorship model was potentially the opportunity to kind of advertise not only our program like you have laid out here, but also some of the key messages we try and promote, like practices like protecting and restoring riparian buffers and like those types of strategies that our program's trying to fund that people can also do on their own. And then just one thing regarding the sponsorship details I had talked with Amy about is just being careful that any sponsorship level wouldn't exceed $10,000 over a 7-year term. So those are kind of my 2 cents, but I'm sorry that I have to go.
No, I appreciate your feedback.
Bye.
This will be to be continued. See you.
See, Hannah, I think to follow that up, just in seeing who's on the call right now, and Amy, this is probably something you've already thought of, is it'd be great to get the larger group to hear this and to think about it. And I don't know if that's an email and maybe more reason to try to get a meeting in July or something like that, to try to capture more conversation on this, because I think it's important. I think just from my seat, I have limited opportunities, but I would hope that the other 25, 26 people in this group might have more to talk about.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think I might have faltered in the earlier portion of our meeting, not getting people to stay on to not give the details of the, anyway, to mix the meetings. But I agree, and I appreciate that feedback. Because partly, we definitely want to make sure it has co-benefits to groups, that you're getting out what you need. And I think to your point exactly was kind of in the very last part of our meeting is how, if this can help serve us and organize in one way, like do we want to switch our meeting structure? But the other piece is there's so many cool ideas we had when we're in person as NERGWG of like, how can we engage more? And if MACD and us can kind of lean into that together, we're just going to get better outcomes of those meetings, because it's been a lot to try to keep going without sort of very, directed resources to it. But yeah, and in talking to Hannah as well, she was saying, so as far as the like mechanics that we had envisioned behind it, is that the sponsorship could function a little bit more like a form or a membership type program that could be kind of used a little bit more like a purchase for a manager than it would be kind of a full like grant application or type of thing, so that it would be easier for grant managers to access as like a marketing benefit or payment versus sort of a full like agency membership type. Almost, yeah, we are trying to make it more of a service, I would say, for the agencies and the grant programs versus something that'll make it difficult, I guess. Because the other piece that we want to be able to be transparent about with you all in the agencies is we want this to be recognized as the resource that it is, and not something that MACD and us are both advocating for, so that we then don't get resources for our other programs, right? This is like a new additional program, and we want it to fit hopefully properly into agencies like resources and things that they can allocate resources to. So, and I guess for you, Samantha and Michelle, especially, like I did want to figure out what do we do. This meeting was so hard to schedule. It was unbelievable. Like the most unbelievably difficult meeting. And it's too bad because the ones that we had in person, especially like a year and a half ago, I thought we did have some really cool generative conversation. I think right now it is really hard because of what's going on with federal funding. And I don't know that a lot of those funders are going to be at the table in the same way. We have our symposium. That's a big in-person event in Billings. It's something I've been thinking about a lot as just MWCC. Like, should we be using our symposium as more of a space to bring working group members together on all kinds of different working groups, so that they don't have to go to like a floodplain working group and the beaver working group and all these different things, where it's like, come to the symposium and go to every single working group all at once, and then something that we can actually, because and I know meeting participation right now is just really tough. So trying to figure out what we do want to do.
Amy, our convention this year is going to be in Billings, but we also have our spring board meeting, which is in Helena from June 10th to the 12th. So if Helena is an easier spot to convene people, just because it's a little bit closer to, we could definitely look into the possibility of having even if it was a hybrid meeting, like part in person, part Zoom, scheduled at the same time there, and use some of our reserved meeting space for it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. The hybrid meeting was the most well attended that we've had, I think. It was a really good idea. And I would say the majority of NERGWG is in Helena, actually, compared to some of the other groups. Yeah.
DNRC also has some fairly large conference room spaces, so if there was ever a need, we'd be happy to host in the headquarters building there in Helena as well.
Yeah, that might be really nice. I definitely still want to I just at least have closure on the conversation for us to open about, like, do we want to engage with the public? Do we want to formulate more? Because I think that, yeah, just the way that WASAC is organized as an entity. I mean, also, to be honest, it would help like MACD and us even put general funding for this program into our own grants. It's like very somewhat, we've written it in very, very little here and there. Do you all think that we should try to well, I don't know. What do you, in the past, I guess the quarterly meetings, this was the first time we weren't able to keep to it, where it got really, really kicked down the road because we just couldn't get groups. So it either means I think it's not serving us well enough to come, or we could go to like biannual. But I don't want to make the decision with no one here. The next one would be, if we did a quarterly thing, we would end up in the summer in July. I know summer is really, really tough for people. What if maybe, Maddie, what if maybe you and I try to see if we could do something in person at the June board meeting? What is it, early June, or is it
10th through the 12th, so kind of mid-June. Yeah, I think we'll I guess just connect this week and figure out a good date and time, and then we can throw that out to the larger group in an email. And if that isn't going to work, we can talk about a July date.
okay? Yeah, why don't we do that? Would, just for you two, would that work? Would the June 10 through 12 work at all?
No, but I'm only one person. I have my future fisheries meeting the 10th and 11th.
That's fair.
That does work for me. The only time that's pretty inflexible is the week before.
Okay.
But otherwise, depending on the larger group, I'm available generally, and can shuffle some stuff around.
Yeah, I mean, if you could throw out a bunch of, or at least some dates in June and July, I mean, I'd like to say that I have a field season, but the reality is that I don't. So I'm just always busy. So I don't know. It's worth a shot, I think, to try to get people, or the majority of people, together.
Okay. That sounds good. I also finally cannot do the first week of June because I'm fine. Well, knock on wood, I'm going on the Smith River. I've been on permits twice and they've gotten screwed up twice. So I'm like, not going to think about it until a couple days before. And then maybe.
That sounds lovely. I hope that happens.
I do too. Plus June, you can't get any better than that.
No.
Well, what else, Maddie? I think we can let you two go, and thank you for your time, and we'll be able to make even some updates on our ideas to bring to the group more broadly. And
I guess the final thought I'll add, which I might just kind of be repeating things that Amy's already said, is that, you know, we want this sponsorship opportunity to be something that adds a service for you guys. If you're able to participate, we don't want it to feel like something that is obligatory for you guys to participate in NERGWG or still have the conservation menu be a tool. So the, Meet the NERGWG members page that I mentioned earlier is something that we would be developing kind of outside of this sponsorship. it would be increased visibility and marketing, but the last thing we want to do is to exclude agencies or groups that just aren't able to participate in it right now. So we're very open to hearing your guys' opinions, what works best for you. And we are also still looking into other grant and funding opportunities for kind of our back-end operations to keep the site running. We also just want NERGroup members to kind of feel a sense of ownership of the conservation menu. So we wanted to bring a sponsorship option to you guys first before making it kind of a general, open to the public, anyone who wants to could advertise on this website kind of program. So yeah, I guess I'll leave it there until we have a chance to present it to the larger group.
Yeah, no, that's a great, those are great comments, because that is definitely where we would want feedback from this group first, because yeah, no, that was very well said. Well, thank you guys. We'll be in touch with next steps, and I guess, Michelle, good luck with future fisheries meeting in June.
Thanks.
But we will put together, Maddie, how about you and I can meet and put together some dates that will work, and then we'll reach out. So
Sounds good. Thanks, you
awesome.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Harry, is it still recording?
Yes, I'll pause.